Hey, good morning, Facebook. It is so good to see everybody on this Wednesday. Thank you for joining me. Today is a super unbelievably important conversation. We are talking about saving our restaurants. We have a lineup that is so special, and I'm so honored to be talking to Kristine and David today. We're going to introduce them in just a minute. But first, there's a couple of hot topics, I would say, that we want to talk about. First, I just need to give a shout out because, I had to do a little bit of a set upgrade here. Do you guys like the new elevated fun red flowers to bring DC Live a little bit more style and glamour? Got to have a good shout out to my friend, the Red Petal, for making our set look so fabulous. Make sure to follow her on Instagram. So pretty. Thank you so much, Sarah. And also, good morning, Susan Thaney. Good to see you. Adam Gregory from Amalinda. Thank you for joining us. We're glad you're here for this conversation. And all of the rest of you. Also, here we are. It's the big old DNC week. So you knew I had to talk about that. It's been an interesting watch. Let me know how you guys are feeling about the DNC. But I do have to say, now you guys know me, I love my MKE. Hi, Annette, good morning. This is where we're at. So I just wanna say, if you guys have been watching, MKE, we can do better. Last night, people were doing roll call from the stage. And what about these beautiful murals we have in our city, or on the bridge with the art museum lit up behind? I mean, we've got to show off because no one else is doing it for us. So I was really hoping, but I do have to give a shout out because, Miss Gwen was looking real good. I was just loving her energy. She did her best to get people excited, but I don't know. So far, I was hoping for more, that Milwaukee and our beautiful state of Wisconsin would just be a little bit more inventive and creative about how we showed ourselves off in the few moments that we had. So anyway, the DNC is here. Tonight's a big night. So keep watching, keep supporting. I also wanted to quickly let you know, tomorrow morning on the Morning Blend, today's TMJ4, we have a super fun, entertaining in style with David Caruso edition. Make sure you watch. I'd love to see you at 9 o'clock on today's TMJ4. We are having a fabulous pandemic picnic. I can't wait until the pandemic part is taken out, but that's what we're doing, and it's going to be super fun. Mike, I know there was no mention of MKE. It's getting hard. There are very few in between comments. We got to do a better job to our national media folks. Also, Chef Dan Jacobs. Have you guys heard? He is so fantastic. And the cool thing is that Chef Dan was recently this past weekend on Beat Bobby Flay on the Food Network. And I just want to give you guys a special heads up. Guess who's going to be on DC Live next week? Thursday, we're doing a special episode just for Dan to talk about his time on the Food Network with Bobby Flay. So cool. He did an amazing job representing our city, and Bobby really loved him. And we're going to get the inside, behind the scenes scoop from Dan about that, about Dan, the fabulous American Chinese restaurant here in Milwaukee, and his outlook for the industry as well. So we'll have our normal Wednesday broadcast, which is going to be, oh my gosh, the one, the only Miss Jennifer Bartolotta is joining me next Wednesday. And our special guest, which is so cool, from Wallpapered City. Have you seen what they're doing? Stacy Williams is going to be with me. It is such a great episode to tune into. And then as a special, the next day, Thursday, I will be talking to Chef Dan. I do want to give a really important and special shout out to our good friend, Chef Thomas Hawk. Thomas was scheduled to be on the broadcast today. And for certainly clear reasons, because of struggles that he went through this week that were unexpected at his new restaurant. I totally understand. He's not joining us, but I do want to give you, he was so gracious. We talked several times, and here's what he really said when it came down to it. My goal is to figure out employment for my staff right now and to figure out the best plan for moving forward. It's hard to discuss all of this without anger and sadness. So I really just appreciate Chef Thomas. He's a leader. He's a wonderful, talented person, and he's so kind-hearted. And I know this is hard and challenging. So he isn't going to be here today, but our conversation with Kristine and David is just going to be fantastic. So I want you guys to like and share this broadcast. If you've ever shared a broadcast before, this is so critical because it's so important. We are trying our best to save our restaurants. And also, please provide your comments, engage with us, be a part of the conversation. We want to hear from you. So thanks for that little Hot Topics chat. It's so great to see everybody. Hi, Pamela Anderson. Good to see you. And Sarah, good to see you. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for those beautiful flowers again. So let's get started. There's so many great things. Oh, I'm sorry. I have got to say this too. I wanted to, and I for some reason looked over my notes. The Milwaukee Community Fridge. I just need to quickly tell you about this. It's applicable to what we're talking about. I just think this is so fabulous. Here's what it is. The fridge is full of fresh food available to anyone who needs it. In this example, when they launched it the other day, there were cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, watermelons, cantaloupe, corn, apples, oranges, clementines, grapefruits, and a freezer full of bread. I mean, this is fantastic. It is outside the amazing Tandem restaurant at 1848 West Fond du Lac Avenue. I mean, this is just such a fantastic community project, and I'm constantly impressed by what our restaurateurs and community partners are doing to help each other and help people that are even less fortunate. Good morning, Kilwins at Bayshore. Good to see you. So we are going to get started, and I am really delighted to have this conversation because Kristine Hillmer is the president and CEO of the Wisconsin Restaurant Association. Kristine is just such a dedicated and passionate person in the industry, and to have her coming into stream with us is just really special. So good morning, Kristine.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh gosh, it's a pleasure. How are you doing this morning?
Everything's wonderful. It's a beautiful Wisconsin summer morning. It's the sun is shining, and restaurants are getting a little bit better. It's still a struggle, but things are looking up a little bit. I'll take it.
I know. I mean, if any inch will take, momentum is good. But as you
Absolutely.
said, it's definitely a struggle. So I know that you have such a good overview of what's happening in our state, especially you're so well connected to so many different people in the industry, from small mom and pop restaurants and bars to large outlets. So your experience and expertise is super appreciated. But to get started, tell us a little bit, what is the main overall purpose of the Wisconsin Restaurant Association?
So the Wisconsin Restaurant Association is officially a trade association. What that means is we provide our members with benefits and services and advocacies to help them run their business and be successful. We have 1,500 members statewide with over 7,000 locations. As you can imagine, the reason why we make that distinction is because there are some operations that have more than one location, and so over 7,000 that we have. And we have everything from our Midwest Food Service Expo in March, generally, to other online videos that we can do. But we have a lot of resources available on our website. One of the things we're also known for is we have an Ask WRA hotline. And we have a number of staff who have decades of collective experience that they can help restaurants navigate anything from HR issues to legal issues to pandemic issues to unemployment. We have a lot of resources. As we know, restaurateurs are great at running their restaurant, and sometimes they need a little bit of help to navigate things that are thrown at them. And that's what we're known for. And that's one of the things that we've been able to do during this pandemic is really employ all of our resources to help anybody who has any questions. Doesn't matter if you're a member or not.
Yeah, the resources I know have been invaluable for so many people. And we're going to talk about some of those coming up in just a second, because your website, which first I'll mention because it's so valuable for people, it is wirestaurant.org. The resources are, I mean, immense. The layers of resources is unbelievable. Props to your team because, wow, it's plentiful. So people can find a lot of information. But let's dive into really some of the most critical things that are happening right now as it's a result of the pandemic. And I know that this is a lot, but I want to read some important statistics just because it's important for the conversation that we outline really where we are as we know today. So here are some of those things about the alarming industry impact statistics. So the estimated sales, this is for eating and drinking places in Wisconsin, for 2018 was a little over $10 billion. The number of restaurant and food service jobs in Wisconsin in 2019 was very close to 285,000, huge numbers. And really, this is a quote that I read in a recent article. Right now, restaurants across the country are struggling on every front. They are trying desperately to figure out how to make ends meet when they are only allowed to fill 25 to 50% of their seats. They owe rent and have invoices for food that are way past due. They're paying extraordinary prices for the safety measures they want to put in their dining rooms to keep their workers and patrons safe. And they are wondering how they will ever find the money to pay for it all. In addition, this is a scary and alarming statistic. The restaurant industry losses nationwide are on track to top $240 billion by the end of 2020. It's so hard to get through this and to be positive. How has your association responded, and what are you doing to make sure that your members and just in general the restaurant community can tackle this somehow?
The numbers are heartbreaking. This pandemic has been just brutal on our industry. Nationwide, collectively, we are the second largest employer in the United States. And when you see those numbers and see the devastating impact, we conservatively are still saying that 30% of restaurants are likely to go under because, as you say, they have bills due. They're running out of their PPP loans if they did that. And they're underwater and they just don't see a way out of it. And when you think of how many jobs and people that supports, it's just an overwhelming way to look at the brutal nature of this pandemic on restaurants. So our association, when this first happened, we knew that our members and really the industry as a whole, and so I'm gonna kind of take the member piece out of it, because when we pivoted to all of our resources, we did not make a distinction between member and non-member because we knew that the impact was so great. And so my team went into crisis mode and we pivoted all of our operations into a few key areas, one of which was outreach. So we had a calling campaign out to all of our members and former members and all of their locations, but we also beefed up the SWRA hotline that I mentioned before. And so anybody who had any questions, whether it was about the PPP loan, about the changes, and that's the one thing that's been so astounding, we have had changes every single day in some way, shape, or form. And even though you may understand something one day, all of a sudden something changes at 180 degrees later, and they need, well, now what? Now what does this mean to me? So I have a fantastic team in Madison. That's where our headquarters are located, and they really have pivoted to providing every resource we can possibly can. But not only providing it, we've gone the extra step to verify that it's correct. Because as things are changing so quickly, we knew that people were counting on us and their livelihoods were on the line, and we had to get it right. So sometimes we may not have gotten out that press release or that information out just that same hour that you heard it. We took the time to verify what is correct, what is not, what is fact, what is fiction. So the information we gave out was correct. We had thousands of calls and emails and things that people needed help with, and that's what we pivoted towards. Now the volume of calls coming in has reduced, and we're now starting to get back a little more to normal, although normal, I'll say in air quotes, what is normal anymore? But that's what we are known for, is we are here for the industry. We are here to answer questions. And then, and then one of those pivoted things is we have a very heavy advocacy effort at the local level, at the state level, as well as the national level, because we know how hard it is to run a restaurant in a normal day. And these are not normal times. And as you said, with all the statistics, it's brutal. So we are trying every way we can to help our restaurants survive, and then have all those jobs survive for all of their employees.
Right. And, you look at these examples too, that are really so just drastic, I know, but you see visually what's happened to the industry. And this might be hard for viewers to see on the screen if it's small, but according to this source, which is in the lower right corner, the year-over-year decline of seated diners in restaurants in the US was a staggering 50.81%. And this was just as of August 16th, 2020, last weekend. So what I like about what you're saying, Kristine, is that use the hotline, because I feel like some people are stuck in fear right now, and they just they're intimidated, they're afraid, they're just thinking, is it easier to give up? And it's overwhelming to, like you said, try to do something to operate, and then on top of it, have to figure out what to do next. So I definitely love the resource of the hotline. And I think that is definitely something, without fear or hesitation, people should take advantage of, because it's a wonderful resource. One of the other things that's been, of course, topical right now is the Wisconsin mask mandate. Has the association taken a stance on that? Was that something, or is it something that you all support? What is the feeling about that?
So as an official policy statement, we are not anti-mask at all. In fact, I even have my mask right here. It's a tie-dye mask. My 7.5-year-old grandson helped me tie-dye it this past weekend. And we are not anti-mask. But we also know that we represent restaurants over the entire state, not just Milwaukee, not just Dane County and Madison, the entire state. And there are a lot of parts of the state that don't have the spread that you're seeing, say, in Milwaukee, because you just have a lot more people around. And so our official policy is that it should be up to each operation to make a determination what makes best sense for them, based on keeping their employees safe, opening their doors, what's happening in their local community, etc. So for instance, the same restrictions that we have in Milwaukee should not necessarily be the same restrictions of what's happening in Richland Center, because the situation is different. And one of the things with the statewide mask mandates, there are so many exceptions to it that there's a lot of holes in it. So we always advise our restaurant and operators to follow whatever laws and whatever mandates there are. So of course, if there's a mask mandate, you need to enforce it to the letter of the law. We are never going to tell anybody to not do that. But we also we feel pretty strongly that each operation is going to be unique depending upon what's happening locally, and they should be able to determine what makes sense for them based on what's happening there. So it's, again, we're not anti-mask, but there's a lot of operations that it doesn't necessarily make sense based on what's happening in their community.
Okay, so it really is something that with the wide range of community sizes and restaurants and different locations across the state of Wisconsin, that it really is basically up to the owner to follow whatever local rules, regulations, and guidelines are in place. So
now, one thing I do want to point out though, is that, so we have a document called the Wisconsin Restaurant Promise, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but the biggest challenge we are going to have is the confidence in dining out. Is it safe to eat? Is it safe to go out? That's the biggest challenge moving forward. And so the Wisconsin Restaurant Promise is something that we put together that helped operators open up and open up safely with a lot of safeguards and so on, and masks are a part of that. And so again, it's not that we're anti-mask, but we need to also understand that what happens in Milwaukee is not what's happening in Richland Center or Eau Claire or Green Bay or Superior. And each individual area should be able to open up a little bit more based on what's happening locally, or clamp down and be more restrictive if necessary.
Right. And that's important too, because there are definitely ways to track what's going on in each area. And I think for the restaurants to be on top of that, and even just to get, feedback from customers and community is so important, to constantly be, surveying and attentive to what basically the people that provide us the revenue and income are telling us, they're comfortable, and ultimately, staff and ownership and everyone operating that restaurant is most important in the puzzle. It's so hard to figure out, but that's good information. Now, one of the things that I think is so important for people, and again, it's difficult at this time, but supporting employees of restaurants. When I talk to owners of restaurants, it is literally the number one thing that they always say to me. It is, how can we take care of and help our employees? So, what are some of the things that you suggest for people to do where they can make sure that they're supporting their employees during this time, whether they're laid off or just, even permanently out of a job?
Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned, when we quickly pivoted to core things, we did the same thing on our website. And so we have resources available not only for the restaurant owners, but we have a whole website dedicated to different things for restaurant employees as well, because we know that these are unprecedented times, and people are worried about feeding their families and making their rent and being safe themselves and not getting sick. And so all of those are critically important. So we definitely have resources available, and the hotline is not just for restaurant operators. We take them from employees too, so that if an employee has an issue, it's like, I'm not quite sure how to handle this, call us. That's one of the things that we are helping them navigate, because sometimes they're very personal, and it's all kept confidential. So if somebody calls in and says, I'm not sure how to handle this, my restaurant, ... we can help them talk about what their options are, help them navigate this. And we do not turn them in. We don't then call the restaurant owner and say, so-and-so called me about XYZ. We don't do that, because we understand that sometimes there may be a misunderstanding. Sometimes you need a neutral third party to help navigate it. And so that's what we're doing. Government, in the government relations area, in the advocacy area, we also have been really vocal with the state of Wisconsin that we need to get the unemployment issues figured out. A lot of the folks that haven't gotten their unemployment checks are from our industry. And these are people who have maxed out their credit cards, who don't want to lose their home, who need to feed their family. So we need to get this figured out. We've also been very vocal about stopping any evictions, about doing rate abatement, rent abatements, and not only for the employees, but also on the business side, because restaurants, as you said, they're underwater and they're in the red and they're struggling to pay their rent. And so we need to figure out how we can support everybody. Ultimately, we have to support the restaurants to make sure that they survive, because ultimately that's where people need to be able to go back and have a job. And if the restaurants go under and the restaurants aren't there, the jobs aren't there. And so we have to support both the restaurant and the employee because both are critically important in order for restaurants to survive.
Right. I mean, those are all such important points. One thing that I've seen that's been kind of, uplifting and positive through this is that even employers who don't have a job for people anymore are helping them find job openings. They are providing them with unemployment options. They're really acting as kind of a counselor for their employees who are struggling. I like that some people have even put together some private Facebook groups. But I think the point is that during this time, communication is key, and staying engaged with your people is really, really critical. I've just seen such great examples of that, and I think that that's important too. Another thing that I saw on your website that I thought was really fantastic, and I just want to make sure that people have this information, different from your particular hotline, but this is really for people that need help with mental health resources. And I just know that there are lots of people who at this time are feeling that they need this help. And it is simple. It is matter of fact, just texting hello to 741-741. And what's so great is that in minutes, a crisis counselor is in touch with you over text. And sometimes people just feel more, they're just able to take this first step and to text their concern than to feel that they have to start by talking to somebody. So this crisis hotline is really important for people, and I hope that if you need, people will take advantage of it. So really important. Your toolkit. So you have a COVID-19 toolkit. You've mentioned it, but this is something that people can go to wirestaurant.org and definitely download, print, save, share with people. But in this toolkit, like you've mentioned, there are just lots and lots of resources, and I want to make sure people know about that to go there. One of the things that you talked about in that toolkit is some marketing examples. This is, I know Gregory's watching from Amalinda, but people are doing some really creative things. Have you loved what you've been seeing online?
It's one of the things that's been fascinating and really cool to watch is the entrepreneurial spirit that has been coming out from many different restaurants. And this is great, a veggie pop-up. We've also seen where a restaurant will create meal kits that you can purchase and take it home, and they have a little recipe card, and you can work on cooking that with your kids, and you can have that restaurant quality meal at home from all those great ingredients, or a take at home cocktail kit would be another idea. So there's a lot of creativity, and that's the one thing that we know that restaurateurs is they are creative, they are entrepreneurs, they are trying to be cutting edge, and a lot of that stuff is coming out. This is a huge paradigm shift for the entire industry, and it's causing that creativity to come out, and it's really neat to see. So if there's those glimmers that I like and I take solace from, it's from that people are really coming together, figuring it out, trying new things, and that's really neat to see.
It really is. And I want to make sure that people know as well, the media is looking for these stories. They want positive stories to highlight restaurants and people that are, in this case, on the rebound. So definitely encourage people to get your story out. Make sure people know about it because there are opportunities to share. And the real hope is that it will help people bring in some business too. Delivery and carry out, this has been a huge topic for people. And it's one of those things that I think some operators are still struggling with, especially if it wasn't a part of their normal everyday business. But as it is for delivery, what are some of the important considerations that people should be keeping top of mind for this, whether it's their own service or a third party?
Mm-hmm. So this is a little bit of a soapbox issue for me. So when anybody will listen, this is what I will tell them. Call the restaurant or go to their website to figure out what they recommend. Please don't do it over a third-party app. Sometimes and I'm not saying that delivery is bad, and I'm not saying the third-party delivery is bad, but there are some problematic areas. Some of these third-party apps does not have a formal relationship with the restaurant. And so the restaurant doesn't even know that their food is being delivered by a third-party app until they walk in the door and they have a logo on their shirt. And
Wow.
sometimes they're 30 minutes late and getting it, or sometimes they're picking up 6 different meals. And if you happen to be the 6th one, your food is cold. Is it safe to eat? Because you don't know the conditions in the cars. So figure out what the restaurant recommends versus doing it through the apps. The other thing I know that has happened is some of these third-party websites will take an old menu from a restaurant, they'll put it on there, and there are a lot of restaurants that do farm to table or seasonal, or they change it up. Well, the things that people are ordering may not even be available, or the
Mm.
pricing might be different because supply prices and the product prices have increased. And so when that happens, you know who you get mad at? You get mad at the restaurant, because
Right.
even though they're not serving that anymore, or it's not the right pricing, or things have changed, or they have, or but the third party delivery system, they don't get blamed for it. So it's the restaurant that gets blamed. So that's my guidance. Some restaurants have also, to keep some of their staff employed, they do their own delivery. And that's one of the things we were able to do with the state of Wisconsin is we've gotten waivers with the state that insurance must cover delivery. And they have some waivers and say they have some ways for them to do it so that they can keep their own staff employed. And again, I'm not saying delivery is bad, but go to the website and figure out the way the restaurant wants it, because the restaurant should be in control of the food, the quality, the delivery, and everything.
Amen, Kristine. Preach, preach it, preach it. That's so, it's what every operator tells me, and it's so important because from the quality perspective, sometimes it's outrageous the high commissions that they're taking, the quality control, the branding. So thank you for that. It's not a soapbox, it's truth be told, and it's so important. And it is one of the most important things about saving our restaurants, truly.
Absolutely.
It so is. So
and carry out and delivery is a disruptor in the industry. And so you're absolutely right. Your comment that not everybody has figured out, but that's okay too, because there are just some meals and some preparations that don't lend itself to not being immediately served, and the restaurants have to be in control of it.
yeah, it's such an important point. So right now, this is something everyone has their eye on, and it is the Milwaukee COVID Restaurant Bar Safety Plan. So right now, can you tell us a little bit what you know, the objective of this plan, and what it's all about?
So I'm actually really excited about this plan. So we have been part of a coalition of multiple organizations and multiple restaurateurs and myself, really working hand in hand with the Milwaukee Public Health Department to figure out how restaurants can safely open, not only for their staff, but also for their customers. And the initial plan was that it would be voluntary, so that if a restaurant wanted to be phase-proof, so that if we had to, God forbid, backtrack in our phase and be able to have to close things down, by having an approved safety plan, restaurants and bars would be phase-proof, and they would be allowed to remain open to the max capacity allowed by their facility. And so it's not even a percentage capacity anymore, because that's an arbitrary number. It's how many people you can serve safely while maintaining social distancing and having all the right things in place. And that's now become mandatory. So by September 15th, all restaurants and bars, in order to retain any inside or outside dining, must have a safety plan into the public health department for review. And then they have to get approved by it. The one thing I'm really excited to see is that the public health department has been really willing to work with restaurants to figure out the best way for each facility. In the past, the relationship with restaurants and bars and the public health department has been a little bit, head to head. But they really are taking the stance that we are trying to educate help people get these plans approved and what makes sense and what's practical, while also helping them open up to the best of their ability. And if there is a problem, or if there's an outbreak at a restaurant, they will come in and they will help you. Maybe we need to make a tweak here. Maybe we need to make a tweak there. But the effort is to get bars and restaurants open to the best ability that they can. And it really is groundbreaking. Nowhere else in the country are they doing this. And we're starting to have conversations with other public health departments to see if this is a model that we can employ elsewhere. So for instance, we're talking with Dane County Public Health Department.
Kristine, let me ask you one thing, because I don't want to overskip this one point. But so nowhere else is doing it and nobody else is doing it, like you said. So it is definitely very forward thinking. But do you think that there's a reason why no one else is doing it? Does it maybe because it's not really quite right time, or are we just innovative?
I think it's very innovative. What we're seeing is the phases, that 25% capacity, 50% capacity, 75% capacity. So, but this is also very staff intensive for the Milwaukee Public Health Department. Mm-hmm. And we've actually also gotten training for some of our hotline members so that they can answer questions. I did see a comment that popped up about 100% capacity. This isn't about 100% capacity. It's about the capacity that your facility can have while maintaining social distancing and safety for your staff and for your customers.
So I think that is a huge misunderstanding, like so huge. I think what you just said is the crux of this, because what people are putting on social media when they get the certificate is not that. They are posting, we've been approved for 100% capacity. So that is a misunderstanding.
Some could be. It really depends upon their facility. So if you have a large banquet hall and a 6-foot distancing allows you to go up to your max capacity, that is a possibility. But it's the facility that is the limiter. It's not the plan. 6-foot distancing is critical. Masking is critical in these plans. Sanitation, your practices, what's left on the table, everything is part of it. It's not just about capacity. It's about the entire picture of how you're keeping people safe.
Okay.
The other thing I want to mention is
it's a big thing that you got to, it's a lot of information. So you're right about that.
It's comprehensive, but these are what restaurants are already doing. So they know how to be safe, they know how to be sanitary, and now they're stepping up even further. So they know how to do this. So I think it's a good model. And I think that, yes, it's a little bit of a chore to get through it. But I think if you have a great safety plan, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to open up to the capacity your facility allows while maintaining social distancing and safe practices. That's what this is about.
And do you know that if somebody doesn't submit their plan by September 15th, what happens?
They are not allowed to have inside dining or outside dining. They can continue to have carry out and delivery, but you are no longer allowed to have any dining options at your bar or restaurant.
And this is regulated by the health department? Milwaukee
Public Health Department.
Okay. So this is, it's so like hard to keep track of. It's so interesting. There's so many layers. I just think so many people are stuck because it's so overwhelming. So I appreciate your clarifications. I know that it's controversial in many ways. So I appreciate that you are upfront and forward about the details and the facts, because it's the only way that we can, get through this for sure. I want to start talking about the Restaurants Act, but I think to do that, I'm going to bring in David Marcus, because there's really some great community spirit behind this, and I think it's important to get the perspective too. So our good friend David Marcus from Marcus Investments and the parent company of Hospitality Democracy, I'm going to bring into the stream now. We all know that those fabulous restaurants are AJ Bombers, Onesto, Smoke Shack, Blue Bat Kitchen, Holy Moly Coffee and Donuts, just unbelievable locations. So, hey, David, how's it going?
Excellent, David. Thank you. And hi, Kristine. Yeah, I'll tell you, it's funny. When this whole thing first started and the information fire hose, went off, one of our first calls was to Kristine and the Restaurant Association, because as all a collection of small businesses, having the association really be a position where we could all come together. And I really think it was important in terms of putting pressure on the legislators to get for example, the first round of PPP. I know that they were very instrumental in creating a voice for our industry.
Yeah, I think that's very good to point out as well. I want to get some feedback before we get into the Restaurant Act, but this has a little bit more to do with the restaurant and bar safety plan that we were talking about. And it kind of plays into this fact, especially in our region. David, how do you think people are going to respond to fall and winter is coming?
Yeah,
so
winter is coming.
I'm assuming this is all part of it, but to be honest, I was having dinner at a great new spot in the Third Ward the other night, and I said to the owner, have you thought about winter? And she goes, Mr. Caruso, one day at a time. So I'm like,
well, look, winter is all I'm thinking about right now, and it was to the point of every restaurant and every physical business is so different. So early on, when they were struggling to reopen, the mayor was struggling with that decision. We were fighting and wanting it to reopen because we know that the days of outdoor serving and outdoor dining are precious in this town. And those are our opportunities to safely create environments that are safe dining, really nicely spaced. And the city really did ultimately get on board. And you're seeing it all over town where restaurants are spilling out into the streets. And that's really been a fantastic savior for the restaurant industry during this period. It's enabled us to get back to numbers where at least we can pay our bills, keep staff employed. So between that and the PPP, prior to this, okay, we're here. We've had landlords who've been cooperative, but the fall and the winter is really where we have anxiety about, and we're working very hard to create plans on how to take some of this outdoor space and partially enclose it to lengthen our season so that we can be safe, add heaters, have some protected environments that are spaced out. Because, if you have a smaller restaurant complex, it's, some of the spacing will be very difficult to do without outdoor dining. Onesto is an example where we have a great situation where we have an upstairs that we use for private dining. Well, private dining, as you know, is struggling right now in terms of having events has been hit. But when the cold weather comes, we'll be able to take what wouldn't be our normal capacity and use our upstairs to keep the same amount of people being served safely and spaced-wise. Because as you mentioned earlier, restaurants, we want to, it's funny with the whole mask mandate. The fact that it became so political and that you could spot a conservative or a liberal based on whether or not they were wearing a mask became crazy. But I look at it as a capitalist. And if even for, if it allows us to stay open longer and keep our business open longer, to me, if it just reduces things and keeps spread down, I'm all for it. I don't like wearing them. It's not fun wearing them. For the kitchen staff who are working long hours, it's not easy. But I look and I see surgeons and nurses around the country are doing it all the time. So the mandate has been helpful for restaurants because you basically have young kids working at the host stand trying to explain to someone that they're not trying to infringe upon their freedoms and their rights. So I think it has created a calm a little bit. There's certainly some people who don't enjoy it, and I think a lot of people don't enjoy it, but this is right. Our normal, and for us, staying open is the key as restaurants, because unless you can stay open, then you can't do the second part, which is the harder part, which you talked about earlier, which is being creative, finding ways to be relevant in this new world. So, I mean, at Smoke Shack, when we weren't open and we were just doing takeout and pickup, delivery and pickup, we started doing Friday night fish fries. Not something Smoke Shack would have normally done, but when I talk to the team, it's like, I don't care who we were yesterday or today, it's who are we going to be tomorrow, so that we have a chance to bridge our way to the other side of this chasm. And I do think one of the things that the restaurant industry in Milwaukee has done really well, and I think technology has helped this, but when this whole thing went down, all of the different independent restaurant operators got together, the Independent Restaurant Coalition, and we all got on Zoom calls, and we have repeatedly throughout this to share best practices. Because to your point, David, a lot of people just don't know what to do, and every one of these restaurants is run by very different minded individuals who have very different ways of looking at the world. And a lot of them, and most of us, are in the restaurant business. Hey, yes, we want to have a career, but we do it because we love it. We do it because we're not, as you could see when things turned off, restaurateurs were not sitting on a pile of cash to sort of figure out how they were going to get to the other side. Most restaurateurs, even the successful ones, do not have much leeway. If they're successful restaurateurs, they may do well enough that they can give themselves a nicer paycheck. But they do it because they love it.
And David, that's a good point. So much good information right there. Two things that I want to get to. One is a question from our viewers, but to talk about when you said being creative as the winter is approaching. One of the things that I've been hearing, and maybe Kristine, you've been hearing this too from people that you've been talking with, is those things cost money. So even people that I know that are in the tenting industry and providing heaters and other equipment to adapt to a restaurant being able to be serving outside during the winter, the people don't have the money to pay for it. So maybe that leads into our Restaurant Act conversation, but that's what I've been hearing is there's not a lot of restaurants who could now invest in something to get them through the winter. Are you hearing that, Kristine?
I am hearing it, and even if they want to, they're hard to find. And as we get into the colder weather, those patio heaters are going to be really hard to find. So it's a twofold issue. One is the financing of it. It's very expensive to put in a patio. Right now, it's hard to find patio furniture, as an example. But the second piece is the supply of it, because these are not necessarily cheap, inexpensive things, but you still have to find them. And you have to have the quality there. It's not like you're going to put your customers on really cheap plastic chairs. So especially if you are more of a fine dining. So there's the cost, but also the availability. That's the issue. And I know one of the things that we were talking about prior to us going live is that the fall is make or break, and even summer is make and break for a restaurant, because in the winter sales dip down. It's a little bit of a seasonal effect, although a lot of restaurants are open during the winter and they do a great business. Where they really make their profit to really help them through those lean times is in the summer and the fall. So now it's critical that people be able to open up to their max capacity and be able to utilize those additional spaces, like their patios, or even extending into their parking lot. One of the things that we've been advocating for, and we did get the state Department of Revenue, who does alcohol enforcement, they're being much more lenient on being able to extend your premises onto other parts of your property so that you can expand that capacity, because they know if we don't make it the summer and the fall, we're not going to make it in the winter.
Yeah, and I did read this. That will be a part of our next topic, but it's interesting. The National Bureau of Economic Research predicts that only 15% of restaurants will be able to stay open if the pandemic lasts 6 months. Well, we're hitting that mark. September, October, depending on when you started to count, is hitting that mark. So along what both of you are saying, that is so key. David, here's a question from one of our viewers, Sarah. She's a person who loves to go out and to dine at local restaurants and to support them. Do you have any tips for diners. For example, she says, when should we put our mask on when a server comes to the table? Do you have any helpful tips about how they can be respectful to your staff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the more cooperation and the more thought that people put into protecting others, it seems to be a very small gesture. So yesterday I was sitting outside at Onesto, and my chair happened to have sort of been in the middle of the sidewalk because things are trying to be spread out. I really didn't want to be tight on the table with the people I was with. But so as I sat back and I realized people were walking by me and my servers were coming over, I put on a mask for a while I was in that situation. So I think it's about courtesy. I think it's about going the extra mile for your neighbor right now, because I think we're in a time where unfortunately there's such a divide in our country. I feel like people's personal gestures can go a long way to sort of changing the landscape of what we're currently experiencing in our world.
Right. So important.
If I can jump in here real quick, David. So one of the things that we need to recognize is restaurants are doing everything in their power to keep their staff safe and customers safe and so on. There's another element that we need to remember. There is a responsibility for the customers to come in and follow the rules that are being set forth. So whether it's you're waiting outside or social distancing while you're waiting or mask up when the server's down or whatever it is, just be respectful. These restaurateurs and their employees have been through the ringer. This has been brutal on them. And to have somebody come in because they heard it on Facebook, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle on, you get kooks from the left, the kooks from the right, doesn't really matter. Coming in and saying, well, I think this, I believe this, it's not helpful.
No.
If you don't want to abide by the rules, don't go there. It's very simple. And go somewhere else, or do carry out, or do take out. But please be kind. Please don't come down, especially on these servers and these hostesses. A lot of times, these are the people that this may be their first job, or they may be a high school student or a college student. Not all of them are, of course, but be kind to them. They don't want to hear your politics. They don't want to hear your personal opinions. If you don't agree with the safety measures that are in place, don't go there. It's very simple.
Earlier you mentioned, you talked about going out and buying things for the restaurant, and just so for other restaurant operators that are listening. So we had the same exact problem. We had to go out and buy a tent for Smoke Shack, and it was going to be, I think, $2,500 to rent one a month. And we don't need one permanently. But our guy, Chris Adams, the gentleman who runs our restaurant group, very resourceful, went out and found online a used tent that we bought for $400. We've been, to your point, you have to get creative during this time to figure out how you're going to reinvent yourself. So we're not opening new restaurants, but so at Smoke Shack, we started doing a pop-up called Brew City Biscuits on the weekends, Friday and Saturdays. We have a biscuit restaurant that runs during breakfast and lunch. And it was packed this weekend, socially distanced, of course, and there was a lot of to-go business. But it's, thank you, I appreciate that. But it's the kinds of things you have to do. And and when we do stuff like this, we're seeing numbers that are the kinds of numbers we need to actually get to the other side. If you're just dog paddling, you're not going to make the progress you need as a restaurant. And we did the same thing at Onesto, where we took advantage of the sort of trends, and we opened Onesto Pacino, which is a to-go window, and we've used it as an opportunity to highlight Chef Sarah, who is our pastry chef, Sarah Moranchik. She does, like butter cakes and chocolate croissants, and we're doing Dalgona coffee. Stuff that's really so good. I appreciate all your preparedness is amazing. But it's been great. And the dogs come by and we give them treats, and it's sort of the energy that's created creates this sense of normalcy that everybody's searching for right now. And it really that's the butter cake. By the way, it is so good. Oh, so good.
Oh, it's so good. I don't know what it is about this one particular coffee. If you haven't been there, Kristine, I can't remember the name of it, David, but you put it on Facebook and it made me go like the next day. And Adam and I had this coffee. We're like, oh my God, this coffee.
So it's called the Dalgona coffee, and it was a phenomenon that my daughters on TikTok and during this pandemic, people were making stuff at home. They started making this whipped coffee, and it became such a phenomenon that we basically said, hey, you know what, we should run this when we open Pacino, and it's been great. And my dad struggles to get it, but we explained you got to stir it up, and it's delicious.
So cool. So I want to talk quickly with the two of you also about the Restaurants Act 2020. And then, David, I want viewers to know there's so much more to talk about hospitality democracy. And I've got some other things I want to get to with you about that, because there's lots of great things. And I do appreciate, and I do want to say, one of the things I appreciate most about you, David, is that you are showing up, not only for conversations like this, but I see you out at your restaurants talking to the employees and the operators and and I think that is so key, because it might be shocking, but not everyone in your position is doing that. And I just want to give you a shout out and credit, because I know that like your heart is so in this, and that is so much a part of this battle. So I appreciate that, and I just wanted to.
I appreciate that, but I would be remiss. The teams are doing all of the hard work, and I don't feel like I'm there enough. So, they are. Our team has been creative and hardworking to try and make sure that they, build a future for us, going forward.
So important. Here's a good question. One of our viewers did want to bring up, and I just want to read this real quick. Rick was saying, his number one concern as a diner is the air quality. So I think that's one of the things that restaurants have been paying very close attention to, is, circulation, the HVAC systems. And I know on your website, Kristine, in your toolkit, there are resources for people to understand about their hood systems and other things related to that air quality for sanitization. So I do think that is top of mind for restaurants as well. So the Restaurants Act, I'm going to actually hide the two of you from the stream and play a quick video. So hold on one second. I'll bring you back in just a minute. 1 second. This is this is producer David too. So I've got lots going on here. Hold on 1 second. What I want to do is I want to make sure that viewers see this video, and it really just introduces the Restaurant Act 2020, which is really important for us to all have a better understanding of. So let me put this in the stream for us right here and make sure that that's what you're watching. And let's take a listen.
Neighborhood restaurants are the lifeblood of our communities. They are where we come together and make lifelong memories. And right now, they are facing extinction. The COVID-19 crisis threatens to permanently close 85% of independent restaurants. 16 million people risk losing their jobs, disproportionately impacting people of color and single mothers. They are our friends, our neighbors, our farmers, our bartenders, our family. 1 in 4 people who lost their jobs during the pandemic were restaurant workers. Without your help, our favorite places to eat will be gone forever. Tell Congress to pass the Restaurants Act now. Visit SaveRestaurants.com.
So that is just a helpful video to kind of get us up to speed about this Restaurants Act. So I wanted to hear from both of you. First of all, this is legislation that is to create a new $120 billion grant program to provide structured relief to restaurants through 2020. David, starting with you, what is your general sense of this, and how can the community help?
Well, I think it's important, because I do think that right now, people, between the support we've already had with PPP and summer being able to spill outside of your 4 walls, that's going to come to an end. And I think that, there are so many small operators that are just barely hanging on. They may have gotten concessions from their landlords once. They may not have. They may or may not be able to. I'll tell you what. When the customers stopped coming, one thing that didn't stop coming were the bills. So this is going to only get more complicated as we get into colder months. We're living. This weather has been so nice. I keep wondering, well, maybe Milwaukee will just stay nice. Now I know that's probably not the case. I think that having this fund in place, I think is important. But I think that having it the first time they went through PPP, they were just and everyone was doing a really great job in getting it in place. But they couldn't think of all the things that would need to be considered as the rules were put in place. So, for example, you basically poured out all that money to staff, and now if you are in a period where it's going to be, even if you were actually generating money, some businesses were still just putting their money out to staff. They didn't necessarily need the PPP, and now when they're going to need it, it won't necessarily be there. So I think having the rules in place that are well thought out in terms of how you can use that money so that you can have as much runway as possible to get to the other side of this period we're in, I think is important. And I do think that as I read through the rules, evaluating where your current business is compared to last year, I think is key, because right now in the summer, my restaurants, with the exception of one, really does not need the same kind of help it will need as we get into fall months and as we get into winter months. So I think that, really having it be well thought out is key. And I think having support on the ground from the public is really key, because it is the squeaky wheel that gets help. And I think that, people coming together to understand that it's not just the restaurants. Every restaurant is a collection of individuals whose families rely upon those restaurants for their livelihoods. It's not, so for a customer, it's just your favorite place to get your favorite burger. And it's always God, I can't believe that place closed. I love going there. So you should have gone there one more time. But I think that in terms of what individuals can do, they can do, you brought up the takeout piece before and the delivery piece. If they can pick up with the restaurants and bypass the delivery companies that are taking somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30% of the sale. Restaurants don't make 20 to 30% on a sale. So it's hard math to make work. So the more you can do as the weather gets colder to support your local restaurants, buy gift cards, pick up meals. I promise you, none of the restaurants in this town are getting rich by those gestures. You're keeping people employed, and you're keeping restaurants and businesses that you love in place so that when we get out the other side, we'll still be there. And right. The Restaurant Act is a key way. If that can be in place for restaurants that need help, I think it's going to be needed. I'll be surprised if it's not.
Right. And Kristine, from the association perspective, what is your position on the Restaurant Act?
Mm-hmm. So we certainly support any sort of economic recovery and loans and so on for restaurants and so on. And we're affiliated with the National Restaurant Association, who has its own plan. It's called the Blueprint for Restaurant Revival. We've been calling for specific economic relief for restaurants since March 16th. It has been a long time that we've been advocating for it. And there's a lot of very similar elements to it between the Restaurant Act and the Blueprint for Restaurant Revival. There's a lot of it. But we are taking it a step further, because there's a lot more to this than just the economics. We need more money into PPP. Right now, the IRS is saying that if you use some of your PPP for business expenses, it creates a tax liability. We can't have that. That needs to be a forgivable loan, and we need to have it tax deductible. We need long-term loan programs, and enhance the employer retention tax credit, and so on. We need much more, including Restaurant Act and those dollars, but we need much more than that. The additional thing that I also want to contrary just a little bit on the Restaurant Act is it's very specifically targeted to independent restaurants. And 75% of our members are independent restaurants. They are the lifeblood of community. They are Main Street downtown in small town America. They are critical in our urban setting. Absolutely an integral part of the restaurant scene. but we can't ignore that chains are also an important part of it. Some of these national brands have franchises. These franchise owners are local families who have purchased into a franchise. They run that local restaurant, and it is, except for that national brand name, it is a small local business. They support the schools, they support the Boy Scouts, they support fundraisers, they have Little League, all of that. So we can't forget that although there might be a national brand on some of these restaurants, they're loaned locally, and they are small businesses. Yes, they have some national branding around it that helps, but they are important too. They are part of that devastating impact of all those people losing their jobs. Yes, we absolutely need to support independent restaurants, but we need to support all restaurants, because all of them are critical to helping keep these families employed, to keeping families fed, to and that economic and that tax base that's so important for our local communities.
Right. And Kristine, I want to just ask you quickly before I get to David about some of the things happening at his restaurants, but the Food Service Expo is currently on the calendar for March 22nd, 23rd. Is there any update for viewers on what to expect, or are we in a holding position to make decision?
We are moving forward with having an in-person expo, and we are also looking at what options we have to add a virtual element to it. So we have made the decision to move forward. We were actually very fortunate that our 2020 expo ended the day that Governor Evers issued his Safer at Home order. We are the last convention before the DNC that happened at the Wisconsin Center District. And it was a little strange, but we had great participation. People are, of course, concerned about the virus, and we're even back then, but it was a great opportunity for people to get together. And we are planning on right now having an in-person. However, we are also having contingency plans, and we're just looking what our options are, just in case. We can't necessarily rest that, well, put blinders on, nothing's going to be happening in March 2021, but we're looking at all of our options. But right now we are planning for in-person, and anybody who's in the food service industry is, of course, welcome.
Our team went this last spring, and it did feel a little bit like they were visiting Chernobyl.
They
were totally safe, but as they went, it was like, they had some anxiety.
It's so bizarre. We had a wedding show at the Pfister Hotel, the first Sunday of March. And then who would have ever thought that 2 weeks later, what happened? We were like, whoa, this is insane to think. Like, we were all together for this, and 2 weeks later. So I feel that experience. So we'll stay tuned for the Midwest Food Expo, but always a great experience for people. Kristine, I know you're going to hang around to listen to my conversation with David, and we might pull you in at the end. But I do want to say, though, before I bring you out of stream right now, it really has been a pleasure. I've heard such fabulous things about you from so many people, and I know that you are just working so hard along with your awesome team to make sure that you're available and can provide resources. And I know that your heart and soul is in this too. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to be a part of DC Live.
Well, I very much appreciate the opportunity to tell the story of how this has impacted restaurants. And a lot of it is gloom and doom. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but there are a lot of neat things that are happening as a result. And I think if we can get past this and more restaurants can survive than not, I think you're going to see some really creative things coming out of the industry. I'm really excited about that piece of it.
And this is for both of you. This is what I'm excited about. I cannot wait until we make that reel, that TV reel of all the amazing, creative, heartfelt moments that have happened during this. I think we're all going to be sobbing and crying and just a total wreck when we see that montage video, whoever produces it, of all of this, the Milwaukee Community Fridge, the creativity, the staff helping staff, the emptying your food pantry for families. You're right. There's so much good, and there is a lot of doom and gloom. So thank you for the balance. I appreciate it. And it was so much fun. I'm going to hide you from stream for a little bit, but thanks, Kristine.
Thanks, Kristine.
So, David, thank you again. It's just, I can't even explain. This is such important information, and you are definitely a critical piece of this. So thank you for being a part of it. You know, one of the things that I read, and I thought of you and was just thinking, wow, what is he feeling now? This is something that,
I can see that in a lot of people's faces as I've approached it in the last few months.
But this is something that was in the, I know you've had to make a lot of very hard decisions, of course. We've talked about many of them during the pandemic. But in April, this was something that I read in the Business Journal back in April, when you said telling 270 people you don't have opportunities for them was the worst professional day in my career. And I read that and I thought, you know, that was April and now we're in August. Mm-hmm. Well, one, I'm not sure, but have there been more layoffs, or beyond that, I can't imagine how you're feeling now compared to April.
Well, you know, it's interesting. In April, we were, the PPP money still had sort of, you know, we were on the front end of that, and, you know, that had started to solve the problem of the 300 people that we had to tell them we didn't have opportunities. So then during that period, they were getting paid. Now we get past PPP, the weather's nice, and we bring a lot of those people back into place. And we had some that didn't even want to come back because there were unemployment benefits that were better than working. Although by and large, our staff, you know, really our associates all mostly wanted to come back to work. And I think they just wanted the taste of normality in their own worlds. But ultimately, to me, I go back to it's fall that I worry about now, because the PPP money and the current situation, we've brought a lot of those people back. But that first 3 weeks where we realized we just had no economic way of keeping those people in place before the PPP money came. And then the unknowns about, you know, trying to communicate and build plans for associates so that they could figure out their best path forward, and how are we going to make sure that they had food. And so we set up funds that we had in place so that if people needed meals, and we did a couple of rounds that way. But ultimately, with the PPP money and things getting back to, you know, opening, we didn't have to use it all, although we have it in place, because I do think fall, I worry about fall and winter. I do think we're going to be in for another round of economic struggles.
Right. And I know that you did really tremendous things, like you said, raised funds for employees, your gift card sales, which was early on in this process, but that the proceeds for those were a part of your relief for employees. And I also know that at a certain point, your family contributed $100,000 to the employee relief fund as well. So definitely things that have been top of mind for all of you and your family, but certainly focused on the relief of your staff and employees too. Is any of that still going on? I don't think so now, because you have people back at work, right?
Yeah, so we have people back at work. Those funds are still sitting there, because I do think that I unfortunately believe that that will come back around. I was most impressed with all of the gift card sales and donations that were made by customers in the early days. We raised, I think, $16,000 or $17,000. Now, not enough to feed 300 people for a long period of time, but it spoke to, you know, how people in the community really wanted to make a difference for the associates at their favorite restaurants. So, and yes, we have those funds in our, you know, if ultimately we find that, you know, in a perfect world, our restaurants stay open and we don't need it to put food on the tables of our associates, and then we'll find another good cause for it and do something within the restaurant group that, you know, that we're proud of. But you know, it's and we're in a more fortunate position than a lot of mom and pop restaurants.
Right. And that's, it is very true, but it's also great because people are looking up to you for information and for some guidance. So to make yourself available, I think is a huge step in a position like yours. Now, we talked about some of, my favorite things at Onesto. I've been looking at those biscuit pictures at the smoke shack, like, ooh, I got to get there. So definitely check out hospitalitydemocracy.com, because all of the dates for like the pop-up brunch and all the other things that are happening at your outlets are on hospitalitydemocracy.com. So viewers can definitely find it there. But what's so cool about the smoke shack, besides, well, one, the food. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
I'm hungry.
I mean, I know it makes you hungry, but I also do love about this, like you said, it's a not tiny, but it's a small restaurant, which is part of the charm, but I do love the expansion of the outdoors. So that is definitely something that has been a plus for this location too.
Been huge, especially during this period, having that outdoor area. And that is where we put the tent, because we think we can utilize both of those spaces to give us just enough capacity to figure things out. Now, the Smoke Shack has been great for to go, and we launched something called Smokin' Wings, which are, is really, it's kind of goes off this idea of the ghost kitchens. So we figured, we've got these kitchens and they've got capacity. What else can we do out of them to be relevant in this delivery and pickup world? So we launched Smokin' Wings. We take wings, we put them in the smoker, and then we fry them till they're crisp, and we use a variety of sauces, and they're fantastic. And so, it's things like that. And it's really, being creative. And once you get past that first period where the information is overwhelming, the fear is overwhelming, and then you could sit back and say, okay, what are we going to do to make a difference and to be relevant and be creative? I mean, that's the fun part. So especially when it works.
At Blue Bat, I see your swag wear that you have on today, but at Blue Bat too, I mean, honestly, for people that haven't been there, sitting on the river in the Third Ward, on any time is fabulous. But right now, when outdoor dining is so key, it really is a great location. And the things that you've done there too. I mean, you see these taco plates and everything else. I mean, it's a great spot. I have to tell you a funny story about my first time there. And this was, way back when you first opened, but I went there for lunch, and the staff, of course, was fabulous. But what I loved is that they came up to the table and they introduced themselves, did everything they were supposed to do, and then started telling us about the flights of tequila. I was like, well, it's 11:30, so I'm not quite sure I can handle that. I did the fried Brussels sprouts instead, which was like, didn't quite get me to where I wanted to go, but it was still fabulous.
If you told me I'd be recommending Brussels sprouts when I was a kid, I would never believed it, but the way they're made there, it's so good.
It's so good. It's so good. The burgers.
That first week, I was shocked. We sell tequila at lunch, but I was amazed at how many people were buying tequila flights at lunch. I was like, okay.
It was awesome. It was so cool. I wanted to talk about Holy Moly too. Yep. Of course, their fabulous bakery is so great. I love the creativity about the offerings of Holy Moly. Everything homemade, fabulous, delicious. I like that I don't know, do you say small batch? But
yeah,
it's like once they're sold, they're sold.
Exactly. I mean, pretty much, and that's really at all of our restaurants. We try and be really, we're foodies, and we try and pick food segments that are affordable, but try and do them better with, so Smoke Shack, all fresh meat, the donuts, all, in our bakery, all, we don't use mixes. We make everything ourselves. And when we're out, and our feeling is be better at it, be better at service, and, people will keep coming. And that's, it's the long-term relationship with the customer that drives this business. Ooh, Sarah's cakes. Sarah is a hidden gem. Her skills, everything is so good.
She's knocking it out. And I love these celebration cakes. I mean, you got to check out the Facebook and Instagram, but the celebration cakes are so cool. I think that's kind of a new thing too, but being creative, like you said. The other piece that I wanted, AJ Bombers, we talked about, we didn't talk about, but I showed the burger. So fun there. And that's definitely a cool family friendly place that everybody loves. Those burgers. Oh my God. Unbelievable. So it's just, and you know, the environment is so cool.
The Big Boy Tribute Burger there is so good. Oh, that was my first job. I was working at the Big Boy Commissary when I was a kid.
It's the magic sauce and everything. I love that. So great things happening at all of the locations. You know, as we're here in the DNC, I do want to touch on that because, you know, you like me and other areas of your company as well. We're all looking forward to so many great things happening in our city. And I have to tell you, David, like I've been watching TV at night and I just can hardly watch it because I'm so depressed thinking these people are supposed to be here.
Well, and they don't, and it's funny because I think they referred to Milwaukee as a place we were all going to gather. They don't, I mean, it's the fact that we're not even sort of getting our props, I find it very disappointing through all this. But when I think of what Milwaukee has lost this year and the timing of everything that's happened between the DNC and a Ryder Cup and a Bucks championship happening at the Deer District, just the amount of things that really were set to really showcase Milwaukee. It's sad for our city. You know, when I think of the restaurants are hurting, but really the whole community got sucker punched on this.
Yeah, and there's no other way to look at it. And, you know, our friend Peggy Williams-Smith, she would, you know, they have done such good things about getting out the video, the content, the B-roll, and they're not the only ones. I mean, we have got a city full of like amazing new murals and people that are just doing such awesome things and story. The Milwaukee Strong Project, the video. I mean, where are these things?
They've just finally convinced all of us Milwaukeeans to be proud and stand up and take credit, and we're finally doing it. And then, bam!
I know. And where is it all? So that's my question. But you know, I was also looking. There was this was kind of disturbing to see, but this was something given to the Democratic National Convention Committee, advised convention participants to sign this pledge. This is part of the pledge. To not patronize Milwaukee's downtown bars and restaurants during the week, which is right now, these couple of days of the National Nominating Convention. I mean, talk about another sucker punch, right?
Yeah, it's you know what, it's you know, it's when you're laying on the floor bleeding, you don't even notice someone kicking you one more time.
God.
You know, you know, it's so unfortunate, and it's such a, you know, it's just add insult to injury. It's hard to see that, and I just try to look away. Honestly, you can't control it.
It's so hard. It's so hard. Well, I want to give a shout out too, because they're opening. We've got some great social distancing time in Marcus movie theaters. I think it says right here, select locations opening this Friday.
Opening, and I think this whole exercise this last 6 months has shown, you know, people really want to get out. People want to go and they want to see other people. I think the mandates and the rules are kind of protecting us from ourselves a little bit, because our instinct is to go be around each other and to go spend time. So I'm happy to obviously see the movie theaters opening, and I know people are happy to get opportunities to go out and do things. So
yeah, I'm excited for it. And I know that a lot of thought and concern has gone into it. So I know we're going to be safe, and it's going to be fun to have those experiences again. You know, before we bring Kristine back in for a goodbye, I just want to say to you, David, and really to your whole family. I mean, you know that I'm a huge fan in so many different ways for everything that all of you do, not just hospitality, democracy, but certainly on all levels of the Marcus Corporation. I just love your dad in that sculpture, Milwaukee. It's one of my biggest obsessions, so you know that too.
He's
but
amazing. Yep. To see it now, to see what it's become, it's exciting to see. When I see that red Solo cup in the 3rd Ward,
it's so cool.
Cool, yeah. No, he's an amazing man, and you know, the people that are a part of the, when you go through stuff like this, you see it at Marcus Corp or on our private side, it's really the people that drive everything. And so to see them doing all that they do, and you know, you've always been an amazing supporter, and we appreciate that.
Yeah. So Thank you, especially during this time. I know there's a lot going on, and knowing that you said yes to speak with me on DC Live, I really am very grateful. It means a lot to me. And I know people were really grateful to have you to listen to as well. So thank you for that, my friend. I really do appreciate it.
I can't wait to see you transform our rooms in the future. I miss those. I miss before and after. I'm like, how did he do that?
I'm ready. I'm so ready. Let's bring Kristine back in just to so we can all say our goodbyes. So Kristine, welcome back. Wasn't that a great conversation too?
It was great. I do have to say I was really disappointed when the DNC asked people to not visit a bar or restaurant in Milwaukee. Our restaurants and bars have, worked over a year to get ready for this, to make sure that it's safe and so on. I also just scratch my head because I'm wondering, a lot of these people are from out of town. Where and what are they going to eat while they're here if they don't go to a bar or restaurant? I'm a little confused.
I don't get it. I mean, I don't understand what the point was either, but it's so hard because like, David was saying earlier, it's just like one gut punch after the other. And I think just to wrap up, I do really believe that, like you said, it's this one gut punch right after the other. And some people can take that and some people can't. And I'm just grateful that the two of you who can take it, and also work through it and to be in a position to be helpful and to be change agents and influencers. I just am so grateful that there are people like both of you, because there are so many people suffering and not sure how they're going to get through this. And I hope that that's what gives you the passion to continue on the fight and the journey and the roller coaster, because ultimately I do believe that for both of you, that is truly what the bottom line is. So thank you for that.
Thank you, David.
Well, thank you for having us. I know that restaurants are so important to our culture, so important to our communities, and the fact that they're at risk of going under is just brutal. And so we want to do everything we can to help make sure that everybody survives. And whether you're in the 3rd ward, you're in the city of Milwaukee, or you're in Altoona, doesn't matter. We want to make sure that restaurants are around for everybody to go to. And thank you for all that you're doing to help us spread our story.
Yes, thank you.
It's my pleasure. So thank you both. We will talk soon, and I'm going to meet you guys somewhere. We're going to meet at that Blue Bat and have some tequila. Trust me.
I'm in. Let me know.
We're ready, Kristine. I'm gonna send that invite. Thanks, you guys both. Be well. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Oh my gosh, so great! Wow, I just am reading the comments, and so many people are grateful for this conversation, and I'm grateful to all of you for watching. So thank you so much to everybody. I do want to remind you, next week Wednesday is another Do Not Miss. David Caruso live, 9 a.m. with the fantastic Jennifer Bartolotta. Can't wait for this conversation. And our friend Stacy from Wallpapered City, which is just amazing what's going on there. So thanks, everybody. This was incredibly important. I'm with all of you. We're together in this. We're going to save our restaurants and do whatever we can. So be well today. Thank you for joining. Thanks, Grand Panic and Pam. Glad you watched it. And we will see you all next Wednesday. So until then, take care. Bye-bye.